The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this episode are that of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the values of sponsors or other associated organizations. Welcome to the Parental Compass, presented by Family Education and Support Services. I am your host, Bobby Williams. If you like what you hear today, subscribe. Pretty much every platform lets you do it, and then you'll be notified every week when we drop a new episode. One thing I think a lot of people, especially young people, miss out on is learning about money. It's important. We all need it to live. You don't like not having it, but there's not enough information going out there. What are taxes like? How do credit cards work? Savings, so many things. Well, our guest today is an exceptional person, Rozanne Garman. She leads RHC, a construction company that works with a lot of government contracts. Life always hasn't been easy for Rozanne, though. She's had to learn a lot along the way and work hard to get to where she's at. So today we're going to hear a little bit of her story and some of the lessons she's picked up. Let's check it out.
So my family came over from New Zealand in 1984, and we came over actually on a B visa, and we never left, which means that I was actually undocumented for 10 years. And so my mother was a single mother, and we didn't qualify for benefits being undocumented, and so she took care of elderly people or people that needed extra support in their homes to help make ends meet. So the way that I grew up is a little different than how I live today.
Yeah. Well, I imagine in those sort of circumstances, your mom must have really known how to make a dollar stretch or get by with pretty little, I'd assume.
She did, actually. One of the most impactful lessons I remember from my mom was the fact, it's crazy to think about now. I believe she made like $1,000 a month, and she raised 3 kids on that. And like I mentioned, one of the most impactful things about that was how she always figured out a way to meet her obligations. And so if our power bill was too much or something came in that was more than what she had, she would contact who she owed money to and set up an arrangement to ensure that she could pay it off. And sometimes it was $5 a month. Sometimes it was more than that. But she always wanted to make sure that she paid off who she owed money to, which I thought was, at the time, I remember being embarrassed by it, right?
Yeah.
However, now, like, that's such a powerful lesson, that you have to figure out a way to meet your commitments or do your best to.
Well, we always talk on the show about how you learn from your parents' example. And that example you're saying, it's almost like that is a core value of someone, to believe in paying off your debts, even when it's not convenient.
I absolutely agree. And she just figured out ways to make ends meet. I don't really remember us going without. Right. I mean, we had shelter, we had food, and so we may have not had things that some other individuals growing up may have had, but she always figured out a way to make sure that we were taken care of, which is very, very impressive looking back at what she did.
Yeah. Were there other money lessons you got from her?
My mom was a big believer in tithing. And so she would have set aside 10% of whatever she earned, and that came first. Before she paid bills, before anything else went out, she set aside 10% for her tithing. And so when I look at savings, even though it's not the same thing for me as tithing, I think of saving money first. So whatever I need to, my monthly amount that I want to save, that comes out first before I actually pay bills or anything else.
Briefly, can you explain the process of okay, here you're young, low income family, and here you are very professionally successful. Briefly, just what took you along that process?
It's kind of interesting and it's a little convoluted.
Okay.
However, I actually was on my own by the time I was 16, and I couch surfed a little bit, stayed with family members, and worked some miscellaneous odd jobs, attempted to go to school, dropped out of high school, entered the Running Start program, eventually received my high school diploma, and I started working as a fire sprinkler receptionist. So a receptionist, excuse me, for a fire protection company when I was 18. And that led to another position with a local company where I ran their office for a couple of years. And so I just had this really unique opportunity to work in the construction industry. And one of the last firms I worked with was actually here in Olympia. I worked for a general contractor called Christensen Incorporated, and they're still around to this day. And the owner actually really invested his time in me. He taught me how to read drawings, how to read a spec book, how to bid, how to manage a project, just, all the fundamentals of construction. And so I had a different journey working for one of the largest pre-engineered metal building companies in the world. They built all of the Costco's, and then finally settled back here in Washington State, and then decided to start my own company.
That was a good condensing it into very concise. I think with a lot of the young people I know that, I work with, it seems like just knowing how to work, like how to show up, how to put energy in, that's a good chunk of the battle, just being a dependable person.
Absolutely. And I would also say showing up and then also like being willing to figure things out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's this misconception that you have to have everything, like you have to know how to do all the things with a specific job. And I will tell you that pretty much every job I ever had, I was thrown into the deep end of the ocean and had to figure things out. So taking that initiative to kind of learn and look outside of the box, I think is really an important skill set that you can bring to an employer, no matter what sector it's in.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Well, so now you have your own children and you're teaching them about money. One thing that was interesting when we've talked before is you've mentioned you don't believe in traditional allowances. So explain that idea to me a little.
So I have this belief that kiddos should have some skin in the game. Right. And so my two children, they do get an allowance. However, there are jobs associated with them. And there are things that they're responsible for weekly in order to receive that allowance. And so let's say they, don't do one of their jobs, then there will be a reminder. And if it's not taken care of, then there may be a reduction in their allowance. So it's not just, every week you get $25 or, $5 or whatever it is. There's jobs that are associated with it.
So it's sort of like your job is at the home, and if you do it, you get this allowance. Can they do more? Like say they clean the whole house or something?
Yeah, so from time to time, one or both will have their, eyes set on something that might be a high dollar ticket item. And so what I've done in the past is create a board, and I'll put sticky notes on it, and it will be mop the downstairs, right? And then I'll put $5 for that, or give the dogs a bath and $2. So come up with various chores, mainly things I don't want to do, and then provide a dollar amount for it. And so they like actually being able to get the stuff done and being able to earn more money. It doesn't happen very often that they're looking at something where they want to be able to earn a bunch more money, but they know that the option is there.
Yeah. What about when they break their cell phone or something? It seems like teenagers just can't not break the cell phone. Do you replace it, or do you make them do the allowance for it, or what's your philosophy there?
So my philosophy on that is that they have to work for it. So if they break it, I believe our insurance is like $200. So then they would either have to use birthday or holiday money or any money that they've earned to go towards that. And so unless there's, so my son is older now, and so it is our primary way to communicate where he's got practices and different things. So unless he's earned that, there may be times where I will loan him the money and then he'll have to pay it back.
Yeah. So you briefly talked about savings, but I want to dive into that a little bit more. So are you teaching your children this saving 10% idea, or how does that work in regards to parenting and teaching about money?
So I do ask the kids to save 10%. And so I have a little chart where we'll keep track of it. And sometimes that doesn't go over with my 9-year-old very well.
Yeah.
However, yes, it is something that I'm attempting to instill in them. And sometimes the confusing thing is, well, why do I need to save this, right? Especially for my 9-year-old. My 14-year-old sees the value in it. And really it's about that lesson that I learned from my mom. When you put something away first, right, it doesn't become something that you can decide later not to do. So let's say you have, and you know, for the kiddos, let's say maybe my oldest had a loan, right, to replace his cell phone. And so he had to pay, you know, $10 a month or $20 a month, whatever it is. If he didn't put that 10% away and then made his loan payment, he might be more inclined just to spend the rest of his money. So I want to set up good habits for them where saving becomes something that's non-negotiable, right? Not something that you just do because now you've got a little extra money.
Yeah. I think that's a tough routine to get in, but I think like, wow, if I would have saved 10% my whole life, I'd be balling, you know?
Yeah. Well, and maybe it's not 10%, right? Maybe 5% works for some people. But again, it's like a different mindset of like, this money comes out first and then I pay the bills. And then what's left is what I can do whatever I want with.
Totally. I think another challenge for a lot of people, youth and adults, is credit cards. And sometimes it's like, well, I'm just going to keep living my life how I'm living it and use the credit card, but then you get all this debt and it's just so hard to get out of. You have any thoughts about credit cards?
I do. And mainly based on my experience as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm totally dating myself, but I remember going to Mervyn's in Lacey back when Mervyn's was there, and I was so excited. I got a $500 credit card and I maxed it out like within like a couple months. I didn't really understand how credit worked and the implications if I had a late payment and late payment fees and the interest and just how it all came together. So it's really important for me to have those conversations with my son and my daughter about credit cards. I also think that credit cards really target young people, and not having that awareness of how long it'll take you to pay off a $200 balance if you only make the minimum payment. What if you have a 1-day late period and then you've got, a $40 late fee tacked on there. So I think for kids or, teenagers, being able to understand like the implications of credit cards and how they can impact your credit score, and then how long they could actually take you to pay off.
Something that I think about sometimes is investing can be a real way to build wealth. But for a lot of people, the idea of investing just seems intimidating because maybe you don't know a lot about it, or it's like, well, I don't have thousands of dollars to put into this. Are there any easy ways to get into investing or teach your children about investing? Walk us through that process.
So I would say up until probably a couple of years ago, I felt absolutely intimidated by investing. And I was really fortunate to meet a group of women that had the same outlook on investing. We wanted to learn more. And so we formed an investment club. And so we actually teach each other about investing. We learn about stocks, we learn about EFTs, all the different things. And so that has actually given me a really great baseline to be able to come home and teach my kids about investing. And so what we've done has actually, we've downloaded the free app Robinhood, which is a really great free trading site. And you can get started with investing any dollar amount you want. So it doesn't have to be thousands of dollars. So for my son, I believe we started investing, finding different stocks that I thought would be interesting for him based on what he wanted to see. But $10, $15 here and there. And so again, like birthday money, holiday money, extra money that he had, he would be looking sometimes to invest in the stock market. I feel as though like having conversations around money and investing with your kids sort of lessens the taboo around it.
Well, I think you touched on something that's very interesting of it's very taboo in society to talk about money even, or it's considered rude sometimes.
Yes, I agree. And so, it is interesting because my youngest will be like, well, how much does this cost? Or how much is our house worth? Or how much do you make? Or have you? And so having those conversations around that. And it also makes me wonder, like, where exactly does that come from? Right? Like, why is that such a taboo thing to talk about money? Because if you can't actually talk about money, how are you going to advocate for yourself later in life if you are trying to get hired, for a position or advocate for a raise, if you're afraid to talk about money and not truly knowing what you're worth?
Yeah, I think just the practice of talking about it and getting comfortable with it.
I would like to see the younger generation, right? Kids being comfortable with money and understanding how to, review a budget, how to develop a budget, how to, what goes into that, how do they balance a checkbook, that again, I feel like dates myself as well, right? Because nobody actually writes things down in a checkbook cover anymore. However, but that process, I think, is really important.
Yeah, teaching how to manage a budget. Do you have your children manage budgets? Like, do they set out like, this is my budget for the month?
So I actually have done that with my son a couple of times, right? So he will have a budget for the week on like, these are our groceries, right? Like these are the things that go out this month, and then attempting to see how he can manage it. So far, we haven't met our budget, but it's been kind of interesting, right? For in that exercise for him to see like, oh, okay, right? Like all these different things go into it. And so that process of like, the stop at Dairy Queen, or let's eat dinner out tonight, or if I need to pick something up from the grocery store, like how that goes down really quickly or affects the budget really quickly.
Well, and money can sort of feel like this unreal thing when you have a debit card and it's like, okay, I got it. I'm not handing anyone anything. Do you have any closing thoughts for our audience here?
Boy, I really believe that more financial literacy for our kids is important. And in middle school, high school, different programs with nonprofit groups, I think can support that, especially for our lower income kids. I think for me growing up, it would have been really beneficial to understand how the world really works when it comes to money, understand how to manage a budget or actually just a paycheck, right? It's like where are taxes, what are taxes, where does this go, how much do I have left? And so I think really instilling more financial literacy into our youth is really important. And again, high schools, middle schools, nonprofits would be great avenues to do that.
Yeah, it's such an important thing for life. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This was a really fascinating conversation, and just thank you for everything you do for the community out here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Rozanne. Outside of her work, Rozanne does a lot of amazing things in the community, and I think I speak on behalf of many in saying that we appreciate everything you do. This has been The Parental Compass by Family Education and Support Services. I'm Bobby Williams. We'll see you next week. Peace.